So fight night, I mean, you're in there and you've got to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you're in the wrong job.
The light's on them, they're on their own. And all this hard work, what they've been training for, this is where it all comes down to.
Spotlight's on you, just you and this other guy, all crowds roaring.
So when I got in the ring, I would go in there to win every time.
You've never felt more alive, ever. You're living life at like 1,000,000 miles an hour in this moment.
Why shouldn't you dream big? There's only people that tell you that you can't do it because they have never give it a go.
You learn about yourself if someone hits you and hurts you, whether you know how much you want to win.
It's brutal, it's barbaric, but it was the safest place I've ever felt. It was like being at home for me.
So we're a nervous fighter, and I think that's half of becoming a professional, is learning how to handle the adrenaline.
The mental power required by boxers to get into a ring, knowing that the sole intention of that person standing opposite you wants to knock you out.
The Halifax Stars boxing gym was one of them gyms which you see in the old boxing movies, and it was based in an old mill. So as you entered the mill, you walked up the wooden steps, and they had a creak to them.
Alt paint were coming off walls. As you walked further up this staircase, you just started hearing these noises, which was first it was like the sound of the skipping ropes going round, and then the sound of the speedball clattering away, and then there were people punching heavy bags, so it was that leather on leather sound.
And as you got to the top of the stairs, the smell of adrenaline was so potent that it kind of used to titillate your own adrenaline kind of senses.
It wasn't a proper ring, it wasn't a suspended ring. You know, it was just a canvas on a wooden floor, you know, with 3 posts and rope, and that's where we would spar. You know, you couldn't fall back onto the ropes because the whole ring would fall down. You know, it's like...
You're walking into a different kind of jungle, a different world. And kind of the man who greeted you when you walked in was Gordon Jones. He was the head trainer and a great believer in amateur boxing. He had no other life apart from living at that gym.
Gordon was the pads man. He took you on the pads, really good. I mean, Gordon was one of the best boxers as well that came out of Halifax.
I understood very quickly that Gordon was someone that could help me in life, who could advise me.
You'd be doing pads and he would really spoken like you. What, I can't hear. And you were really quiet.
He wouldn't talk much, like, he'd ask you how you were. I'm all right, you know, but he'd know or sense if something wasn't right.
He attracted me to Halifax Star and kept me there. He made me feel it was my home.
From Halifax, Richard Dunn. You know, Richard, huge name in the boxing world, you know, for his fight with Muhammad Ali at that time.
Richard used to stand and he'd be like that, and he'd stand in front of you and he'd say to me, "Come on, Scotty," you know, start punching and that. So I'd be playing with his stomach, boom, boom, instead of using the medicine ball, boom, boom.
My uncle told me a story about he remembers Richard being on the door in Halifax, you know, as a nightclub doorman. You know, he remembers getting thrown out by Richard one night, you know. And talk about fate, you know, all of a sudden Muhammad Ali's looking for someone to fight to, you know, defend his world championship and, you know, in Germany.
It's really a shame that you putting him on me. This will be an annihilation. I'm too fast.
All of a sudden he's gone from a pub in Halifax where he's never fighting again to getting an offer of having a couple of fights and then fighting for world championship against the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, Muhammad Ali. You know, and to be totally honest, you know, he put up a very brave attempt. You know, I think he was up and down off the canvas for the first 5 rounds and just totally outclassed, and I think Richard would roll his hands up at himself and say, you know, he was totally outclassed.
It doesn't seem to be any question that he should not continue.
Well, he's out on his feet, Ferdy, and as a doctor, you know it's about time. And look at Ali.
Look at Ali's windmilling
That's
style.
it, that's it. The referee, Herbert Townsend, is stopping it here in the 5th round. Still the heavyweight champion of the world, successfully defending for the 16th time.
One thing Richard did take to Germany with him was a good sense of humour, because after the fight at the press conference, one of the reporters said to him, "When did you realise you were losing the fight?" And Richard said, "When I got to Halifax train station," which, you know, you've got to have a good sense of humour to come out with something like that.
Halifax, walking around Halifax, pretty clear that it's a working class town. You know, it used to be a prosperous town with the mills. Everybody was working in the mills. You know, rag trade booming, Crossley's biggest carpet manufacturer in the world, I think it was at the time. And then all of a sudden it's gone. Within 10 years, all that was gone. You know, there was nothing. You know, there was shopping, there was drinking, and it was a very difficult town to grow up in. It was a very segregated town as well. If you were discriminated against, you know, olive oil skin, you know, you got a nice tan and everything, whatever, you had to stand up for yourself, and that wasn't easy. Because you're not standing up against, you know, some, you know, private schoolboy, you know, whose dad's paying 20 grand a year for him to go to school. You got to stand up against a working class lad who's also having an equally tough time. You know, he's got nothing to do in his life, but, you know, just pick on you.
In the 70s and that, I don't think kids understand. I'm trying to talk to my young lad now, like, but you know, we used to have blackouts, and there were no electricity. We had a coal fire, thank God, but we had no coal. So you know, we used to chase. I mean, we were bad lads at the time. We used to chase the coal wagons and nick coal off the back of the wagons. But it was because we had no coal. There was a local coal factory down on. It was coal storage down on Shea Lane at Holmfield, and we used to go down, jump over the fence. I mean, this is what I mean. It were all about survival in them days.
So being brought up in Halifax, it's very much a working class family for me. My mum had 2 jobs. She worked at a fish shop, she worked at the old pencil mill. My dad worked at Marshall's, where he was picking up stone slabs every day. He used to come home covered in dust and be exhausted. But there was always food on the table, but it was hard. And I think as a kid as well, I remember how difficult that was. And that's probably where, you know, you build that resilience to go into that environment of a boxing gym is knowing what hardship is. But when I talk about hardship, I don't talk about being down a pit or anything like that, but just knowing about respecting what people go through to make sure you don't have to go through that. And I think that's what I got from that environment of being brought up in Boothtown in Halifax.
It were tough growing up, you know, council estate and all that. I went to a school. It was called Ovingdon when I went, and then it changed to the Ridings, and it went downhill, and it was labelled the worst school in Britain at the time, which I think was 1998, maybe 1996. Well, at the time, I got into a bit of trouble. I was playing rugby. I was still playing rugby league, and I got into a confrontation with some guy, a local drug dealer, you know. I was on a night out with a couple of friends, and he'd approached us and said whatever. So I give him a pasting, and then I got a phone call next day, and he says, "I'm going to shoot you." I says, "Sound okay." I says, so instead of me waiting at home for knock on door, I went to look for him, and I met him, and yeah, I was about that far from getting him. But he dodged that way, and he shot me through the car window. When he started firing that gun outside the car, I turned around, and I was in the car, and I leant over to cover my head, and the bullet went in here. And so if if my arm's not there, where's it going? It's going straight in my head. So I was very lucky. But all that were going on, all this madness, and it was just normal for me, you know. But then I got into, and then maybe a couple of months later, I got into boxing, and yeah, it made me realise, you know, it made me disciplined, and it gave me a path, you know, growing up. So I'll still live by that ethic, you know, today.
From Halifax,
I got initially took to boxing because of Muhammad Ali. Dad pushed me a little bit at first because I think he wanted me to get a bit fitter when I was younger. You know, I was a podgy kid, so he had a nightclub in Halifax, my dad, and one of his customers, Jimmy Moore, who were a known boxer in the area, Jimmy, you know, he had a word with Jimmy and said, will you come up the house and train our Adam? So Jimmy was my first trainee, you know, and that I think lasted about, you know, however long it lasted. But then when I really got into it properly, Jimmy, you know, I went with Jimmy and Trevor Callaghan, who were a manager, a local manager. You know, I mean, Jimmy's, I think, is 6 years older than me, but I remember meeting Jimmy, like I say, I'd have been about 10 or 11, maybe 12, when he came up to my dad's, to our house, and, you know, trained me in garage, you know, on pads and stuff like that. So he always looked like an adult to me. I mean, at that time, Jimmy might have been 18, 19 himself, but as a young fella, he could drive and he was a boxer, and it was like, you know, I looked up to him, and I still do now. I mean, I'm 53, Jimmy's 60, but it's like, I always look up to him as sort of a, you know, Jimmy, what should I do here? Like, you know, like a father or like a leading sort of figure that really is only 6 years older than me.
It was the closest thing to a father figure I'd had since my dad had died. When I started working with Jimmy as well, that was one of the kind of hand-in-hand agreements. If I trained with Jimmy, I worked with Jimmy, because he wanted to make sure I didn't fall off track. I didn't end up like all the other boys who was in the care home setting, or all the boys on the streets who were now selling drugs or in jail or committing suicide. A lot of them commit suicide. So Jimmy kept me on track. You know, Jimmy used to make me give him like £15 out of my wages, just because he wanted to educate me about how important it was to have a little bit of saved to one side for a rainy day. So these kind of things, you know, is what happened in the boxing gym. It was an education. It wasn't just this man who was a boxing coach who was very stern and grumpy half of the time. There was a method in his madness. The method was that he wanted to nurture people, he wanted to care for people, and if you trained hard and you did well, Jimmy would reward you, and that reward was he would give you his time.
I mean, Jimmy's a great fella. You know, Jimmy did a lot with Trevor, went all over the world, fighting for world championships. It's quite a funny story with Jimmy, like, you know, because they're at this place, like village in South Africa, and all of a sudden, these fellas run in with machine guns and start shooting the place up, and everyone ends up under the boxing ring, Jimmy and, you know, his fighter, and they're pushing them into the middle, you know, under the boxing ring, and this all hits the news in South Africa about.
Well, I don't believe this. We've had gunshots in the hall. Our own crew had to dive under the ring along with most of the spectators. And another gunshot.
The same night, Nelson Mandela's people rang the hotel where Jimmy and this lad was staying. He tells it better than me, Jimmy. But and said, you know, we're really sorry what's gone on, and would you be up for doing a peace march through the village tomorrow? You know, Mr. Mandela would like you to join him. And Jimmy said, no, I wouldn't really, you know. Well, I don't ever want to see that village again, really, you know.
It was bred into me with boxing. I loved it. Well, my nickname's Cass. My first name's Clayton, and I got the nickname Cass after Cassius Clay. And he was my hero, Cassius Clay. And I just loved boxing in the gyms. The smell of the gym, I'm not saying it's a nice smell, it's an horrible smell, it's a distinctive smell. The sweaty gloves, the sweaty feet, and I've had that smell inbred into me for all these years. I never turned professional. I stayed amateur. I did okay as amateur. And then a friend of mine, Adam Fogarty, he moved down south, and he asked me to move down there with him. So we went down there, me and Adam, and training in the great gym above the Royal Oak in Canning Town with some of the great boxers, Frank Bruno, Gary Mason. And then one day Adam picks the phone up. Hello, how is it? Hiya, so-and-so. Yeah. Right, yeah. How much? Yeah, I've got a mate, he'll come over with me to Isle of Man. Anyway, he puts the phone down. He goes, Cass, we're going to Isle of Man next weekend. Oh, are we? That's good to know. Yeah, we're going to be bodyguards. Oh, are we? Right. Well, never been a bodyguard in my life. We're going to bodyguard Meatloaf. Meatloaf, yeah, the TT weekend. Adams, they had contacts over in the Isle of Man. So we're with him for 5 days, 4 or 5 days. The bloke who were paying us, who were the head of the security, he says, right, meet us this afternoon in this pub and we'll square you all up with the money. So we got there and we were all sat there having a beer and he's wedging everybody up, paying them this, paying them that, and everything was cool. And one of the other lads who were doing security said to Meatloaf, says to the guy who was doing the security, said, why did you need 10 of us all the time with him, with Meatloaf all the time on this beautiful little island where it is, nothing really happens? And the guy who was telling us says, oh, I didn't tell you guys. He goes, he's had death threats from the IRA. I'm glad he didn't tell us that, or else I wouldn't have been doing it.
So we opened the lock-up in early 2000. We stayed there for about 3 or 4 years before moving into the next building. And then very quickly from that building we moved into this one in 2007. This is a memorabilia wall, so all the boys that become champions, then we get the pictures framed and we put them on walls. But since we've been open, we also got approached by lots of the old boxers from Star Boxing Club who used to bring lots of memorabilia. This is all when we started, so you've got the pictures of the lock-up. And as you can see, the ring and the stone floor and the bags, some of them bags they actually lasted about 10 years, like, so, and then we moved next door when we started looking for affiliation for the England boxing. And again, it looks clean there, but you see where I've just put the ring in, again, where I nicked some money off as remortgage, and I bought a £3,000 ring, and wife's going, where did that come from? Like, she just took that picture. But you can see how clean and tidy it were. And when England boxing visited there, they looked at that and went, wow, and got affiliates straight away, which enabled us to be able to get boxers away fighting. In 2007, when this building came up for rent, as you can see there, it's got all the old windows that are blown through, all wooden boards there. And we double glazed it, and we put a ring up there, put signs up, which again, it's always proud when you put a sign up, Halifax Boxing Club, and it looks, it becomes official that this is ours, this is our place. But this is the most important wall here, where you get all the original All-Star. These are all original paper cuttings from the Star Boxing Club. They go back to the 60s and 70s, and you've got Eamon Fenley and Phil McGrath, Richard Dunn, Bob Ennis, one of the coaches, all the history. And if you look down here and you read them here, some of these boxers in them days, 100 fights a year, 100 fights in a year, imagine that, that's one a week, more than one a week, isn't it? We've got people like Walter Stewart now, or again, old Star boxers. He's from Scotland, he's Walter Stewart, boxed at Star Boxing Club, had some of the best fights going. And I used to ask him questions. In fact, he's up here now, he's Walter Stewart there. He's fighting with Walter McGowan, again, which was a champion, English champion, Scottish champion. And he says, in them days, in the 70s and 60s and 70s, if your coach got you a fight, it meant you were getting paid, you were getting food. He said, so you were off the streets of Illingworth and North Halifax and you were going to Blackpool Tower to fight. He says, and in general, he says, we were all that good. He says, like Eamon Fenley there, we're knocking 90% of his people out that were fighting, 90% of them. Imagine that in them days, and they were getting fed and paid. He says, Mick, everybody, they all want to do it. He says, they fight every week if they could. And then you've got Steve there, and some of these people here that they're still involved in amateur boxing now. And with me being chairman and president of Yorkshire ABA, some of these people, we're now giving them awards for being involved in the boxing for so many years. They get a Yorkshire award for their contribution to the sport in Yorkshire, like, absolutely brilliant.
Mick Rowe was boxing, he started a boxing gym, like a room, just like an empty room at the Mills. I needed to be honest with Mick as well, and I was honest with Mick. I said, you know, I'm not in a good place, Mick, I need help. And Mick brought me on board. He said, you know what, why don't you start coaching? And I thought, well, yeah, that's a great idea. It's not a waste of having to go through all that, what I'd been through as a child, learning all those skills and techniques. So it gave me kind of a lifeline, did Mick, because it was a really, really complicated time in my early 20s where I didn't want to live. And in Halifax in particular, there was two roads. There was that road of destruction, of drink and alcohol, or there was that road of working hard and trying to make something of your life. And not many people chose the latter path.
About 20 years ago now, isn't it, when you came to Halifax Boxing Club and then started coaching and everything.
Yeah, but even like today, coming here and seeing this, because I saw what it was.
It brings it all back.
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. A boxing gym's not about fighting, because it wasn't about fighting for me at all. It gave me something I didn't get at home. It gave me something which has enabled me now to be successful. You know, if I didn't have the gym, I wouldn't have a family. That's a fact, because I would have cracked up.
I do feel it's sad sometimes that I never actually boxed competition level myself. So I do get in the fraternity, I get looked down on a little bit because I've never, you know, they say, I've got one of my coaches go, you don't know the dart place, you know, because he sort of winds me up like, because I've never boxed competition level, where he's been an amateur boxer and a professional boxer, and he's one of my best coaches, like, and he says, you've never, you know, so we get into little arguments, and he goes, you've never seen the dart place. And I understand where he's coming from with that. He says he understands it, but it's whether you can deliver that to the young people and make them understand it. So when I see it in their eyes in the corner, I know whether they're not going to box or whether they are going to be boxed. I know whether they're scared or they're not scared. Even the ones that can hide it really well, I know whether he wants to box or whether he doesn't box. And if I don't think it's safe, then he's not boxing, and that's it, you know. The dark place is what is part of the discipline. Is understanding what that fear is when you're stood in front of 500 people in a ring like that, you know, 11 years old, your first fight, your legs shaking, you know. And I try giving them that feeling that, look, this is it, you get through this and you're on it, you've done it. You don't have to do it ever again, but you've done it. And sure enough, you know, they go out 9 out of 10 times, they perform fantastic, win or lose, they come away, grab hold of them and go, brilliant, that's it, well done.
It's always been my dream to be involved in boxing. We're not just an amateur club, we're a professional club. We've got we've had a few professional boxers, and we've got more professional boxers coming through on the scene. And it's great to be, you know, putting these shows on, local shows down the community centre, getting all the community involved. Absolutely amazing. So this is the Gordon Jones Memorial Trophy, which Gordon's wife Caroline donated to the club through the flower money from when he died from his funeral. And this is goes to the Ebden Bridge best boxer of the evening, every show we have, and they keep all this till the next show. And this is very special to me and Ebden Bridge Boxing Club, because that's where I first started at the Halifax Stars.
The name of Halifax Star Boxing, it means a lot to me as a kid, because if I wouldn't have probably had that sort of in my life at the time, I'd have probably gone down a bad route. off. It's absolutely massive what we've done in a very, very short space of time. I think we become affiliated after 2 weeks of opening the doors. And when we opened, we had St Augustine's. They're still on board with us, so that's all the refugees and stuff in the community.
I'm Adrian, member of staff at St Augustine's Centre, which is a charity based in Halifax which supports people seeking sanctuary, so namely people seeking asylum and refugees who arrive in Halifax and Calderdale more widely. They come here, they're welcomed, they're part of a family, and they come here just as a channel to channel out a bit of aggression, frustration, feelings of loss, and it's an amazing session. We see the importance of physical fitness and also boxing. We see it physically, we see stress lifting off people's shoulders.
So we're getting ready now for the first show of the season. This is 22-23 season. We try to get the building all spick and span. So as you can see now, we're just painting all the roof now. We've got painters in doing all the roof. I've just had all the new lights put up here, which is fantastic. Oh, so when the boxes all come out of the corner there, and they have flashing lights and the music's playing. So it gives them that feeling of having, it's like being at a professional boxing show. All the seats sitting out here like this.
When I last saw Steve, I was a young teenager. I'm a grown man now, 43 with a family, and I always looked up to Steve as like the mentor, like the older brother you wish you had, the uncle, blah blah blah. And then the next time you see him, you're this adult who's a family man.
You're the youngest lad in the gym, Chris. It's completely different to what we're used to. You know, we were fighting, and we were our bouts were in like, working on social clubs and
like when we boxed, there was only like 10 boxes in Halifax at the time. Now it's like there's hundreds.
If it wasn't for Gordon keeping Halifax Star alive for 50 years, then these boys wouldn't be here.
No.
A mainstream school, is teaching you these different subjects, but they're not teaching you the things that this little rundown boxing club was, which was to believe in yourself. You end up with leadership qualities, because once you started boxing and learning the skills and this, that and other, you'd end up passing these on and helping the younger ones. Myself, I didn't carry on with training fighters. I just felt there were enough boxing gyms to cater for the young kids. I'm concentrating on the older ones, so I don't work out of a gym. I work in different spaces, community spaces, but I'm still teaching them the same stuff. It's not watered down version of boxing. It's all the same skills. Tonight I deal with stress and anxiety and pressure, and how to cope with failure and defeat, and how to cope with success. And all the words that I can still hear ringing in my ears from 30 odd years ago from Gordon, it's just been recycled by me all these years later, and I'm quite proud of that. And I think, if Gordon were here today, I think he'd be quite proud.
It's like the older fighters. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't be where we are today, would we? You don't realise the older generation back in 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s that used to go around fighting, they've set a platform for us guys to work from. They're history makers, they're the ones who wrote the books, we aren't. We're just trying to keep it going and keep it on for them and keep their name imprinted in the history books.
So I'll use the mental strengths that boxing and Gordon taught me within my private life, and how to overcome the obstacles and the challenges in private life for a better outcome.
What was taken away from me in my life, the boxing gym gave me all that back. It gave me a family, it gave me a sense of worth, it gave me my identity back.
taught me discipline, it taught me a bit of respect as well.
The kids that we've got off the streets.
But at least they've got a dream where something could come.
I'm doing good in the community.
We have people with autism, people with disabilities.
No one can achieve anything by themselves. You need to be within a community.
It's not about the fighting sort of side of it, it's the respect that the clubs have for each other is massive.
The gym is the soul of the community. This place has a heart, this place has passion.